It was probably Kane's worst adventure yet. You and your entire group of characters had woken up a couple of days ago, lying on a gravel path that led to the most stereotypical looking Japanese high school you had ever seen. If anything, it looked like a store-bought video game asset. Cherry blossom trees were scattering their petals everywhere, and the sun was seemingly permanently stuck on it's as bright as midday, but you can tell it was definitely morning brightness. The air was warm and somewhat moist smelling, and the wind was just strong enough to make yours and Ragatha's hairs move in the wind. There was no description given, and Kane was nowhere to be found. Also, everyone had been dressed in Japanese school uniforms, which was especially upsetting to Zubel and Kinger, as their digital bodies really didn't fit into the outfits. Especially Kinger, who was dressed in a skirt, because the chest piece definitely wouldn't fit into any real pants. Though he adjusted quite well to his role as female student, it seemed. Inside the building were hundreds of wooden mannequins, which usually Kane used as placeholder NPCs. Minus a single female student. It was you who immediately realized what this was setting up. This female NPC looked like a terrible 3D render of an anime girl with super long pink hair and black, lifeless eyes. Ugh. Of course she acted like everyone else at first, but it quickly became evident why she was here. She was the adventure. Luckily, you weren't the only one to notice, as you were sitting in the school's cafeteria. With the others, you were sucking on orange juice. Thankfully, Ragatha had managed to organize everyone to stay close to each other. There never was a moment where one of you was alone. I think we should talk to Kimiko-chan, suggested Kinger. Maybe she'll understand our caution. Jax deadpanned. Nah. You scoffed. If she's what I think she is, that would only screw up whoever she's targeting. Through a simple game of eliminate everything that didn't make sense, the group had unanimously agreed that the female student NPC was going to be a yandere. She was always alone, got super fidgety around Jax, who you noticed was the only male student who wasn't a placeholder NPC, and she always glared at you and the other girls. Plus Kinger. In a very obvious manner. That was also the reason why Jax was right now enjoying all the attention. He was leaning against the cafeteria bench, with the reluctant Pomni and Ragatha leaning against his shoulders. Just so there were more targets that could be targeted, and nobody could be singled out. But everyone was getting super sick of pretending to be head over heels for the bunny man. Why can't we just kill her? Grunted Zubel. That would end the adventure immediately. You shook your head. Nah, then this will just turn into some paranormal ghost type thing. So what do we need to do? She barked. The take-apart toy woman was getting quite upset at this seemingly never-ending adventure. And quite frankly, sitting all day in the classroom was bothersome, with the faceless wooden dolls that repeated the same 3 lines when spoken to. Ugh. Of course, you had an assumption as to what would continue the adventure, but you didn't feel like bringing it up, as you didn't feel like being bait. But if you were the one to suggest the solution, you'd also have to be the one to do it, as you'd know how to pull the strings. You tapped your fingers on the table, gazing over to Kimiko-chan. Her eyes were widely staring at the back of Jax's head. Why do Jax dates her? This was the third time Ragatha suggested this. Ew, complained Jax. You could at least pretend like you find me attractive. Guys, we talked about this, you said. Then we still become targets, as we are romantic rivals. You guys don't know anything. You sighed. Besides, I'm the first one who was suspicious of her, so I'll probably be the first target anyways. You said that before thinking, and now all eyes were on you. What? Then you date Jax. A blush covered your face as you puffed up your cheeks. Hell no! Come on. I'm not that bad. Angrily you pouted. We gotta move on the adventure somehow. Jax winked at you. The bunny man had his eyes on you ever since you spawned inside the digital circus. As you yourself were a bunny person too. You were a little smaller than Jax, of course, and had a luscious feminine body that was covered by thin, short white fur, almost making it look like skin from afar. Your nose was an adorable pink little triangle that quickly moved up and down when you were agitated and breathing. And the pelt around your cheeks turned red whenever you blushed, just to make it more obvious, almost as if Cain intended it. Your eyes were floppily hanging down behind your back like pigtails, and you had short white whiskers. And an adorable puffy tail that pushed up your skirt all the time. It was quite a hassle to keep down. Unlike Jax, though, you had a more bunny-typical mouth with a slight overbite. You occasionally bit your tongue still. And you had big, round, red albino eyes. Your name in this world was Jazz. You bit your lower lip, maybe a little too hard. It hurt. You really just wanted to get rid of this uniform. Normally in the digital circus you wore a navy blue coverall that was incredibly comfy. And honestly, you were making plans on buying one or two once the digital circus decided to show you how to leave it. Though with everyone looking at you and having accidentally sputtered out just how much you understood about the scenario you were in, there was no running away. You just had to be the bait. You sighed. Fine, Jax. We go on a date. The purple bunny man jumped up. With one foot on the table, he shouted, "Have you heard, everyone? Me and Jazz, we're going on a date!" The wooden puppets clapped their hands together, and you narrowed your eyes as you peeked over at Kimiko-chan. Her eyes, too, were narrow slits. Your heart jumped. You knew it. This was a yandere story. And confidently, you smiled. Now, the plan could get started. As reluctant as you were, after the bell rung to indicate the end of the school day, you got up and joined Jax outside on the path leading to the town your school was in. Since the days never ended so far, it was concerning to see that the sun had progressed. Nervously you looked up, only for Jax to grab your hand. Which made you look at him. Remember, you're the one in danger here. Right. The town had everything a town needed. Minus the humans, of course. It was all just wooden mannequins. But they functioned. They even spoke. Sure, 2, maybe 3 lines at best. And you heard the countless times. Good morning, sweetie, here's breakfast. From my mother and Percy since you arrived here. Oh god, the breakfast was terrible as well. Though, now that you knew that one of them was after you, it felt more eerie. So, Jax, where will we go on a date? He chuckled. There's really only one spot here. During your explorations, you had discovered 3 primary landmarks in this screwed-up town, outside of the high school, of course. It were a general store that only sold school supplies, a library which sold books advertising various skills, from cooking up to sword fighting, and finally a cafe called Starcane's. The reference being obvious. The only place where at least a familiar NPC was present, in the form of Bubble. Bubble was the cashier and, well, since she didn't have hands, she couldn't really do anything. So she just floated there, smiling, occasionally chuckling. It was clearly an indicator that, in fact, this was still an adventure and you were still in the digital circus. You sat down with Jax inside the coffee shop. He exhaled slowly. So, what now? You rolled your eyes. To appease Cain, there was only one thing that could be done. Well, we have a date. You now sat down yourself, and Jax smiled. Why are you so happy? He shrugged. We're on a date. I thought I'm supposed to be happy. Uh-huh. A waiter NPC arrived next to you. What should we get? You smirked. Jax, what do you like? He blinked. He knew that face. It's the face you made when you were about to ruin someone's day. One of the reasons he gave you just a tiny bit less of a bad time. As I was mostly kicking himself in the butt. I like something that isn't a coffee. Or more specifically, I'd like a coffee that doesn't taste like one. Oh, Jax, you read my mind. You said with a smirk. I will have a half caffeine quad venti, 1 pump mocha, 1 pump frappe, 1 pump white mocha, half crosshatch caramel plus half crosshatch hazelnut, plus Italian drizzle swirl with half soy, half breath, extra hot, no foam, whipped cream, and half of the shots upside down. I'd also like ristretto on the decaf, make it long on the regular, and 2 scoops of vanilla bean powder. Jax blinked. He had no idea what the hell you just said, but halfway through your order, the mannequin had started shivering. What the... was that even coffee? You shrugged. I call it coffee, but it might as well be a warm milkshake. The mannequin then reluctantly turned its attention to Jax. But before the bunny could say something like, I take the same, you grabbed the NPC's wrist, ordering for Jax. He takes a venti tread mister with 12 pumps white mocha, 12 shots coconut milk, and extra caramel drizzle, and add some whipped cream on top of that. Jax furrowed his brows. That didn't sound as impressive as what you had ordered, but still the NPC left dejected. Why did you order so little for me? He asked you straight up and you giggled. Well, you wanted a coffee that doesn't taste like one. By the time all the shots are done, there's practically no room for the coffee. You're a genius. You brushed over your floppy ears. I know, you're talking to me after all. Smirking, Jax answered, don't get to fool yourself. We are still stuck in the digital circus, and you haven't made an escape yet. You sighed, leaning against the chair. I know. You looked at him. But it would be much easier with some help. Jax clicked his tongue. Not happening. I tried way too much. And by tried way too much, I mean I annoyed Ragatha to the point where she just accepts most of my hilarious pranks rather than looking for a way out. Maybe if you went searching yourself, you would have found something. He thought for a moment and then shrugged. Too much work. You scratched your head. There were a few things you wanted to ask him, but never had the opportunity to do so, as he was always in a jokey mood that made any serious questions sound dumb. So this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You cleared your throat. So, I'm curious, do you remember anything substantial? Jax huffed. You mean from before? He simulated putting a VR headset on, and you nodded. He thought for a moment. I want to say yes, and then just taunt you by saying, I won't tell you, LOL. But no, I don't. As far as I understand, when you get into the circus, you know something is wrong. You remember what you were doing, but not who you are, not who you were, how you even got here, and most importantly, your name. You remember snippets. Most likely that's where that order comes from. You know, the one that you just made. But nothing to truly grasp who you were. It's probably part of the torture here. You exhaled through your nose. Yeah, I know, heavy subjects. He muttered. I wanted to enjoy this. He almost sounded like a bratty teen as he said that. Do you think the others got Kimiko-chan already? Oh, come on, what did I say? I want to enjoy this. No, you tilted your head. You mean you wanted to go on a date with me? He shrugged. Maybe. Maybe I like you. Maybe I think you're pretty cool. Maybe I was hoping there was something to talk about, but considering the vagueness of the world around us and our lack of remembering anything, this is an indicator that there is nothing to talk about. And this was the moment you realized he had been crushing on you, and unintentionally, you blushed. It was nice to hear that you were desired, even if you were a silly-looking furry rabbit. Well, there's one thing, you said. And Jax looked at you, right in your eyes. A feeling of familiarity that I get when I look in the mirror. According to what Pomni said about her looks, what Ragatha said about how she is a doll and all. It's a feeling that should not have happened. Jax nodded. He was himself completely blown away by the fact that he was now a cartoon bunny. You shrugged. I just think that maybe in the human world I had a pet bunny that looked similar to how I look now. You know, that's why it seems so familiar to look at my reflection. It's almost comfortable, but at the same time it's kind of freaky as well. Well, you certainly freaked out less than the others to their new body. You smiled. You know, Jax, I never took you for a talker. Awkwardly, he scratched the back of his head. Well, I'm not. I like to do my seducing with other means. He leaned forward a little, tilting his head and smirking. You know, like coy looks. You burst into laughter. He was obviously over-exaggerating for a joke, but then he did something that made you blush again. As he set a hand on yours and got really close. And then I'd like to have some physical contact. Your eyes widened at his touch. But before you could answer anything, the drinks arrived. The mannequin was covered in sweat, but the overstyled drinks on the platter looked appetizing, as disgustingly sweet and synthetic they were. Jax took a drag and coughed. Oh God! Women really drink this? Be glad pumpkin spice season is over, you commented. And Jax chuckled. After taking another sip of the vile concoction, he grinned. Is it bad that I could get used to this? What, the drink? He shook his head. No, I mean, this. With you. Smiling, you tilted your head. A little shy. You're serious, aren't you? Jax nodded. Maybe after the adventure, you know, we could... Actually, now that I have a quiet moment with you, yeah. Jax nodded. Maybe after the adventure we could, you know. You chuckled. Actually, now that I have a quiet moment with you, I think I'd like that. Yes. Somehow the two of you ended up staring into each other's eyes lovingly. I knew that in the nightmare circus, love could still be found. The sun was setting. You noticed it before him. The adventure is progressing. Ah, sweet. The both of you stood up, leaving behind a few green papers. They were Kane's interpretation of money. Leaving the shop, the two of you walked, hand in hand, aimlessly through the town's streets. The problem was that both of you almost forgot the danger posed by Kimiko-chan. Jazz? Was this bug always there? Commented Jax suddenly, as he pointed at a gate. Following his gaze, you narrowed your eyes. Yeah, this is definitely new. That's a sign, right? I have the feeling we made so much progress we should take the risk. Otherwise this will just loop. The two of you cautiously approached the park. It was silent here. The fake city ambience that had been playing on repeat was gone, replaced by nothing but the wind. The park was big. Finally, something non-Euclidean, you thought with amusement, as it definitely was bigger than anything that should have fit in this part of the city. Though as you cautiously walked forward, Jax just couldn't help himself. He just liked what the starlight was reflecting in your eyes. Too much. Not realizing this was likely part of the adventure and that the two of you were in grave danger. Both of you sat down on a bench. Jax was wrapping his arm around you. You know what? I think I might even fall in love with you. Really? You said too quick to make it sound like a nonchalant scoff. Yeah. You just wanted to say the word love without actually sounding like you mean it. Mm-hmm. Say it. Come on, Jax. Say it. The bunny closed its eyes and gently placed a kiss on the fur on your head. I love you, Jazz. For a beautiful moment you were quiet, looking into each other's eyes lovingly. And then you purred your lips, allowing Jax to kiss you on the mouth. You exhaled. His lips tasted incredibly sweet. One of his hands wrapped around your rear, pulling you closer into him. And once you placed your hands on his chest, the bunny man lapped out his cartoonishly long tongue. Your slimy organs crashing as you hungrily sucked on each other's lips. It was almost the perfect kiss. It was exciting, making your heart pound. You wanted more. It felt so hot and so... You couldn't help but moan. At least not until you heard the noise of a stick break behind you. Almost in response, quickly, you jumped up. Aha! You shouted. Jax himself got into a fighting position too. But just as you pointed at the silhouette in the shadows, 4 other shadows jumped it. Huh. You blinked. Looks like they were vigilant after all, commented Jax, as the other characters of your group were mercilessly beating the crazed yandere who had been rushing towards you the moment Jax had said the word love for the first time tonight. Stop gawking at us and help us, grunted Zubul, as the anime girl's hand was pushing into her face with one finger poking her eye. Shrugging, you and Jax joined in, kicking the helpless yandere. At least until, with the simple snap of the fingers of Cain, he teleported everyone into the digital circus's stage area. Though everyone kept kicking for a few seconds, which by now was just air. Take that and that, you edgy bit. Everyone? Finally, Cain got everyone's attention. And finally, you and the others noticed that you were back in the more normal digital circus tent. Cain stood on the stage, next to him Kimiko-chan. Though what upset you and obviously Jax and Zubul, who were trying to deal as much damage as possible for every kick, she looked fine and completely unharmed. Well, that was disappointing. Cain was talking about how this adventure was supposed to be a detective horror story with Kimiko-chan strategically killing everyone, but the final girl, Kimiko, and Jax, the dead characters after each death, would then reappear in the circus, and that made Zubul incredibly upset. After all, the toy woman didn't want to participate in the first place, and according to her, All she had to do was pretend to want to ride Jax's purple bunny beep. If she wanted to get out, she was so upset she slapped you. But nevertheless, the adventure was over. And according to the disappointed Kane, before it even started. Still though, everyone was still rewarded with the typical feast. It was late at night. Night usually being the first 8 hours after an adventure. When you climbed out of bed. Ditching your coverall for convenience. You snuck out, unclothed, with a heavily beating heart. Walking past the sleeping quarters until you stopped at Jax's door. You clicked the buzzer. And 2 minutes later, the bunnyman opened the door, looking down at you with widened eyes. So, Jax, I was wondering, you said as you seductively squeezed your chest in front of him, if maybe you'd like to continue where we left off? He chuckled. Well, Jazz, there's one problem. What if I just said no and slammed the door shut? You're right, I twitched at the thought. I would probably abstract right the second. You're not gonna do that, right? Again, he looked you up and down, making you feel like a piece of meat. Though, somehow you didn't mind it. Jax shrugged. Come in. My bed is warm, and my body soft. Thank you to the people who are supporting me on Ko-fi. You guys are keeping me alive.